The African Union and this process of regional integration is not only in terms of trade and economics, but also it is about stability and security. That is why that is why it was created the African Union Peace and Security Architecture, the AFSA. It is a comprehensive framework of institutions, legislation, and procedures to that they were established by the African Union to promote peace, security, and stability in general in the continent. It was established in 2002, and the the design of this suborganization is to allow the African Union and the subregional organizations to effectively prevent, manage, and solve conflicts. Um, so we have these three elements, but another one important because they have to prevent the conflict, manage the conflict once it is present, solve the conflict, and then to handle with what it is necessary to do for reconstruction and development after the conflict ends. To better understand the APSA, it is necessary to mention its core components, its core elements. There are number one, the Peace and Security Council. This is the main pillar, the main, like the decision making body, and it is in charge of preventing, managing, and solving conflicts. And it is similar to the United Nations Security Council. It's like, yeah, the same function that includes yes, preventing like the diplomacy and authorizing the peace and security operations. In second place, we have the Continental Early Warning System. That is the organization, the body in charge of gathering information to anticipate and prevent conflicts. Another one is the Panel of the Wise. This is a body composed by five members that are highly respected among the African community, and its main role is to advise the Peace Security Council about decisions. The next one is the African Standby Force, that is a body that is composed by civilian, police, and military groups, and they are the ones in charge of operational capability. I mean, they when they have to deploy a peace or support operation, they are the ones in charge of that. And finally, the Peace Fund, because obviously they need a funding, and this is the financial instrument to mobilize and to collect, to gather the resources and finance these operations in terms of peace and security. As an example of how the APSA works, we have the African Union mission in Somalia. This mission was started in 2007 and until 2022. Uh, the main goal of this mission was to support the transitional federal government in Somalia and in the fight against all Shabab, that is a terrorist group in that country. So they were seeking to ensure security for this political process. And well, as I mentioned, this mission lasted for 15 years, and then it was replaced by another mission, the African Union Transition Making in Somalia, from 2022 to 2024. And here the intention was to shift the responsibilities, because at the moment the African Union forces were in charge of the mission of ensuring security. But then this responsibility was going to be shifted to the Somali security forces. And as I mentioned, it finished in 2024, but in 2025 they saw the necessity to continue with the mission because of the challenges that they still face. Because the capacity of the Somali security forces is not enough to ensure that stability. And it was created the African Union Support and Stabilization Mission in Somalia. It started in 2025, and the mission is to continue giving this, offering this support for the stabilization of the country. So this is one of the most clear examples that we have of a successful mission of the African Union in terms of security and stabilization, and they are trying to achieve these goals that I mentioned at the beginning of preventing, managing, solving, and then reconstructing after the conflict. Another example of the successfully work done by the African Union is the decisive role that they have in the negotiations in Sudan in 2019, after the period of the President al-Bashir. The African Union achieved to bring back to the negotiation the military force after this conflict. There was a coup by the civilian opposition, led by, well, civilian and military force, and the African Union started with recognizing that this change of government was unconstitutional. And then, after recognizing this problem, they continued with the suspension of Sudan from all the activities related to the African Union. In this way, they achieved to manage the situation, and they achieved an agreement. The, the outcome and the impact of this agreement is that they restored the stability of the country, and they established a democratic transition in the government. Yes, a government led by civilian and the military force, but constitutional. So this successful mediation is one of the most clear examples of the African Union's capability to work towards stability and democratic processes. They have this principle of zero tolerance for unconstitutional changes in government. So in this way, we can see that the first step, preventing conflicts through diplomatic actions. The relevance of the African Union and the AFSA lies on this capacity that they have to maintain stability and to ensure this security. They have core principles. For example, the principle of non-indifference. For example, with what happened in Somalia, so they have the duty to intervene. Another one is the zero tolerance for unconstitutional changes in government, with what happened in Sudan. So with these actions and these values, they are trying to fit into the global security architecture. For example, the United Nations Security Council. But with this local organization, they are ensuring that the necessities are going to be addressed in the time that they are need to be solved, and properly address these issues. So the African Union is also relevant in terms of the protection of human rights. And for that purpose, the African Union has three institutions, three bodies. And the first of them is the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. This is a quasi judicial and promotional body that was established in 1987. And well, it was established under the African Charter or on Human and People's Rights. And it is like the main body in continental terms for human rights. The headquarters, the location is in Gambia, in Banjul. And well, the main intention of this body is to collect documents, to perform studies, organize seminars, and like to spread information to promote human rights, the protection of human rights. With this, we can see that this body works like by one hand as a monetary system, and on the other hand as a research body. So combining these two elements is that this institution achieves to work effectively. It is often the first point, the first contact for human rights complaints, and when this institution addresses the problems, they can be referred to the Assembly of Heads of States, or under the right conditions to the African Court. That is the next institution that I'm going to mention. The African Court on Human and People's Rights is the judicial part, the judicial body of the African Union. It was established by a protocol to the African Charter, and it became operational in 2004. In the court complements and reinforces the actions and the work of the commission that I just mentioned. This organization is fully judicial, and the location is in Tanzania, in Arusha. The main objective of this institution is to solve cases and disputes concerning the interpretation, but also the application of the African Charter on Human Rights, and all the treaties ratified by the states that are concerned, that are immersed in the problem. I just mentioned that the commission is like the first contact with this kind of bodies. In this case, the court is not. States and the commission and intergovernmental organizations bring the cases to the court, and they can solve these problems because it acts fully as a legal authority to address these issues regarding human rights. And finally, another body that is concerned on human rights but also on good governance is the African Peer Review Mechanism. This is a voluntary self-monitoring mechanism that was established in 2003 under the new Partnership for Africa Development Framework. It is fundamentally concerned on promoting and assessing good governance. They focus on fostering the adoption of policies and standards and practices that led to stability, to economic growth, to sustainable development, and to accelerate the regional integration. As an example of the work done by these institutions, we have the response of the African Union to the COPs in recent years in Africa. For example, in Mali in 2020 and 21, in Guinea in 2021, in Burkina Faso in 2022, and it is true that the main response was by the APSA with this principle of zero tolerance to unconstitutional changes in terms of governments, but also the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and the African Court on Human and People's Rights played an important role supporting and ensuring the respect for the human rights norms. In the case of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, during these coups they focused on monitoring human rights during and immediately after the coups, and promoting the return to the civilian rule as fast as possible. They condemned the coups and expressed the concern over ensuring the protection of human rights. In their concerns, they include arbitrary detentions of political figures, of civilians, also restrictions of freedom, and also the right to protest. Condemning the coups, they applied suspensions and restrictions to the countries about the actions of the African Union, and in this way, the restrictions were not only in terms of political and in economical terms, but also about protection of human rights. So they try to ensure the rights of the detained individuals, providing them the necessary monitoring for their protection. On the other hand, the African Court on Human and People's Rights, their role is more preventing, because the African Court is the ultimate judicial mechanism for accountability. So, as we mentioned, it does not act like in a direct way, but indirect. So, the existence of the court in these cases it works like a reminder. Its existence is just a reminder for the political leaders, in this case the military leaders, to remind that they are not immune to the legal accountability for human rights violation and abuses. So its role is also essential, but in preventing violations.